I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. In your moment of silence, I would ask if you remember two terrific Heights residents that passed away just recently. Both were trustees on the village board. The first is Bob Spencer, who passed away last week. Bob was very active in the community, and also Bob Favorite, who passed away. His services are this Thursday, and Bob was a longtime member of the fire department and whole lots of other activities here in the village with he and his wife, Kate. So our sympathies to the Spencer and Favorite families. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone, and welcome everyone who's watching from home. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee DeVore. Trustee Gett.
Present.
Trustee Kazam.
Present.
Trustee Goff.
Present.
Trustee Wigginton.
Present.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Present.
All right, again, welcome everyone. We have a quorum. Next item of business is approval of the Board of Trustees minutes from February 21, 2023. I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Make the motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Any corrections or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. We'd be at comments from the audience. If anyone's here tonight to address the board, please come forward to the podium, give your name and address, and try and keep your remarks under 5 minutes. Anyone here tonight to address the board? Public comment going once, twice. Public comments closed. We'd be at old business. Any old business to come before the board? Hearing none, we'll get right into new business. And Trustee DeVore, obvious, is absent tonight. She has asked and worked with Trustee Kazam to oversee her resolutions that she has tonight. So the first order of business is an appointment, a mayoral appointment of Mr. Chris Ahart to the Greater Peoria Mass Transit District Board for 2023 through 2027. I'd ask for a motion to approve that.
Make the motion.
All right.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Any discussion? I can't say enough of how proud I am of Chris Ahart. He's already ascended to the chairman of the Greater Peoria Mass Transit District and doing a great job for all of Mass Transit, but specifically Peoria Heights. So I'm excited to reappoint him. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton.
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Aye.
That passes. Next is a joint resolution from Administration, Finance, and Building and Grounds. It's approval of ordinance 2023-1700, an ordinance authorizing the lease of the Centennial Building owned by the Village of Peoria Heights with Senator Dave Kaler. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Trustee
Second.
Gett. All right, I'll go to you, Trustee Kazam, then Trustee Gett can highlight the improvements on the building.
So we're very excited to entertain the possibility and the vote for Senator Kaler to occupy the Centennial Building. The lease agreement is $7,200 a year, and it's a one-year lease with an option to renew for the following 4 years.
Thank you. Jeff, you want to comment on what any kind of leasehold improvements?
Okay, we're putting security cameras around the building, and there's some minor work that needs to be done, some wall to be fixed inside the building, but it's nothing really too major. And I'll echo Trustee Kazam's that this is a big honor for us to have him here.
Thank you. Jennifer Allison, who is Senator Kaler's Chief of Staff, is here tonight. Jennifer, I don't know if you want to make any remarks. It really came about really suddenly. Probably 2.5 weeks ago, Senator Kaler called me to inform me that he was losing the space in the building he was currently leasing, and that he had an interest in being in Peoria Heights. And after thinking a little bit, along with the administrator, we thought that the Centennial Building might be a possibility. Jennifer and Dave toured that. So Jennifer, welcome. If you'd like to say anything, we're glad to have you here tonight.
Well, we're excited to work with you guys. I don't really have anything to add, but this is intended to be a state office, but we aren't going to make you contract with the state because that can be a pain. So we are excited to get this process going, and I think it'll be a great place to pull our community to, any more than we already have. But
Thank you. Discussion, questions, trustees? Dustin, not leaving anything out?
No, just the term is December 31st of 2024 is where the term goes to, so. Yes, that's it.
Okay. If you're ready for the question, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Gatt.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton.
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg.
All right. Welcome. We look forward to having you in the neighborhood. Anything else under administration and finance that, Mr. Administrator, you want to comment on?
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Okay, so we'll go to the next resolution. It's Economic and Community Development, approval of ordinance 2023-1701, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a First Amendment to the redevelopment agreement between and by the Village of Peoria Heights and Ward Drive LLC. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve this ordinance.
A second, please.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Go right ahead, Trustee Kazam.
So this is really a housekeeping issue as far as I can understand. I know that there have been some questions from my fellow trustees, which I've read through, and if there are any here this evening, I or Wayne Aldridge can answer them. But the parent company of this LLC originally acquired the property before they really knew what they were going to be able to do with it. And this is, they're changing the name of it. They incurred some bills underneath that previous name that they would like to recuperate underneath their TIF agreement. They are TIF eligible expenses, and so they're changing the name, and they want to be able to utilize, get those finances reimbursed underneath this new name.
Thank you. Discussion? Wayne, did you have something I said? Okay. Sorry, reaching for the microphone, sorry. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I would just want to compliment Wayne Aldridge for getting back to me. I had several questions on this issue, and I was a little bit uneasy when I saw this, but I want to appreciate, Wayne, your responsiveness on getting back to me. Some of the questions I had were, does this alter the time scope of this particular project, making this amendment? Originally, if the trustees remember, we had put a 36-month time frame on this project completion, and my worry was that we were extending that 36 months out. I was happy to hear that the original time frame completion date remains the same. I was also happy to know that the amount of money that is, and the allocation of funds remains the same regardless of who we're calling a developer. So that same allocation schedule will remain the same as well, and there's no extension of any more money that would be available regardless of who we're calling the developer. So I was very pleased to get those answers. I appreciate, Wayne, for your responsiveness and kind of going to the source of this as well. So I will be in support of this motion.
Anyone else? Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Trustee Gatt.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton.
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Trustee Kazam, anything else under economic development before we go to the next piece of business?
Nothing.
All right. Let's move on to administration and finance. The first is approval of the use of Tower Park on September 8th through the 9th, 2023 for the 125th anniversary celebration. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right.
So as we'll hear later tonight in the meeting, we're hopefully planning, well, this is the 125th anniversary of the Village of Peoria Heights. The Chamber of Commerce has decided to take that on, and this is the use of Tower Park for some of those events.
Questions? Madam Clerk?
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Goff?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Next is approval of Prospect Road closure on September 7th, 2023, from Marietta Avenue to Glen Avenue for the Taste of the Heights. Trustee Kazam would ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. Back to you, Trustee Kazam.
Well, as I stated previously, has to do with the 125th and I think this is the third annual Taste of the Heights that's happening. One was canceled during COVID, so we need to close the street.
Thank
We're
you.
all very familiar with this.
Discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk?
Trustee Gett?
Aye.
Trustee Kazam?
Aye.
Trustee Goff?
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton?
Aye.
Trustee Weisenberg?
Aye.
All right, thank you, that passes. And next is the approval of a donation in the amount of $50,000 to the Peoria Heights Chamber of Commerce for the 125th anniversary celebration. Trustee Kazam, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
In a second?
Second.
All right, go back to you, Trustee Kazam.
This request has been made by the chamber in order to host these events, and I see Barb Malaccio and Teresa in the audience. If they have anything to say, they're welcome to come up to the podium. I know that each of the trustees have had individual conversations with them, but it would be helpful to hear a little bit from you.
Hello, thank you for having us this evening. So I speak on behalf of several of our board members here of the Chamber of Commerce.
For
So
everyone watching at home, would you introduce everyone, please? that
yes,
brought you with
so we have Danny Phelan, we have Pete Duvendak, we have Brett Johnson, Teresa as our coordinator, and then we have Stephen Cook. So, of course, we wanted to show our support for this. So I speak on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. We are thrilled to host this 125th. As some of you know, there are 7 events that we are proposing that would happen primarily in the fall, engaging so much within the community, having that connection between the businesses, having the residences, having entertainment that would happen here in the park as was just approved, having the Taste of the Heights, having an amusement area. One of the most important things is to have the history exhibit, which I think could even fold potentially into future developments that might happen with presenting and really preserving the history that is in Peoria Heights and with some of those expenses that were in there. So with the ask that we had, we do realize that there's a lot of due diligence that we're going to have to do moving forward with this, but I think we are going to have the support of our board. We have a wonderful board, and with the support of the community and volunteers, it's really going to be a wonderful, successful event.
Questions?
I know in previous celebrations, like a booklet was made. Have you seen those?
Actually, Matt did bring a booklet with the presentation. He had a couple of other things. I did speak with Sean at the library, and he said that he had a wealth of information. So we are just so excited to move forward to potentially do a booklet and just kind of see what's going to be feasible with the expenses that we'll have, and we will be open to all suggestions, within the trustees, within our board, within the residences, because it's really just preserving the past. I mean, just a little bit that we've discovered already is just fascinating. And with the past information that we have to kind of carry that on and move it forward.
I'd like to see a booklet, and I got a kick out of that, Trustee Weisenberg. You're the technical and electronic guy here, so. But you want
We may be
something-
reaching out for help on that one then.
I've a few people have shown me past celebration booklets or whatever you want to call them, and It was pretty interesting looking through that history.
Yeah, Matt brought a few things, and it really was fascinating. And then just doing, some online and just a little bit that we've spoken to with people just within my business, kind of mentioned like, hey, I know you're from Peoria Heights, and just little bits of conversation. People are so excited. My grandfather owned this or was an administrator on that, and they're like, I have so much memorabilia that I can share with you. So it's really exciting. And we're like, okay, we need brakes on right now. We've got to get this approved first. So that's where we're really looking forward to reaching out and involving the community in with it. And it is so neat because you get community members. I mean, they're living here in Peoria Heights, and they're saying that their grandfather, was some part of the village. So it's going to be interesting to see how far back we can really closely connect with current residents with some that potentially could be the, back to the 125 years. And then the kind of final celebration, I think it's wonderful that it actually would be on the actual date in November as the same when the Declaration was signed 125 years ago. So that's one of the particular reasons why that date was chosen. So we're bringing forth that significance as well, too.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, we're all very thankful to you and the Chamber for taking the lead on this. We're very appreciative for the Quaquin Centile. Am I saying that correctly, Trustee?
Yeah. We've looked that up many times. How do you say this?
And I know you're also looking for community support as well. So anybody watching this or reading the minutes, if they would like to reach out and offer their support or memorabilia, I know you'd be very appreciative of that.
Yes, absolutely.
I also want to thank the Chamber for taking up the mantle of this. This is a big undertaking, and I think it's actually telling. I think at this meeting last year, when we had our first reading of the budget, I had said, oh, well, just FYI, we're coming up on the 125th. Let's try to put some money aside for that. It is this meeting last year, a year ago. So I appreciate, this is good, this is actually a very good meeting to do this. So at that time, we looked around, and I am so happy to hear that the Chamber has taken up this. And you mentioned getting community support as well, and I know the library and a few other bodies that are in our community, could be in the school system, obviously. One thing that I want to make the board aware of, I actually sit on the Chamber board myself. So for this vote, I will be abstaining. I don't want to be any confusion about my abstention, that I think that this is an excellent idea, but for this vote, I will be abstaining. But thank you.
Anyone else? Just one last word. One of the things I would like us to do as a public body in the village, to recognize longtime business people, longtime residents that have contributed to the progress of Peoria Heights. So if you know of people that you think we should recognize, we've got quite a few months ahead of us to do it. So just let us know. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Gatt.
Aye.
Trustee Kazam.
Aye.
Trustee Goff.
Aye.
Trustee Wigginton has abstained. Trustee Weisenberg.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. We are so excited to start moving forward. We've been anticipating this evening, and yes, let the phone calls begin, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I think administration is excited to roll out the budget. So this is the first presentation of the proposed Village of Peoria Heights fiscal year 2020-23-24 budget. So Dustin, are you or Stephanie going to start?
What you have in front of you this evening is a balanced budget, year 23-24. I want to thank my financial assistant, Stephanie Turner, all the department heads for all their hard work on this. This is the fourth year in a row we've ended our budget with a large surplus. This year, we're ending a surplus that just exceeded $1 million, so there's a lot of things to be proud of. And I would just like to say thank you to the board and all their support and everybody else involved. So I will turn this over to
All right.
Stephanie Turner.
Okay, we will be doing the budget presentation that I'm sure you are used to by now with the updated numbers. To start with, the overview of the operating budget for the entire village. I would like to note that all funds but two are balanced or have a surplus planned for the coming year. Of the two that do actually have deficits, one is the INF fund, which is always budgeted to operate at a deficit. We never actually spend to a deficit, but we do budget to a deficit in order to allow the water company full flexibility in planning any projects that they need. So that's been done yet again this year. It will not be spent to a deficit. We do it just for flexibility. The second fund is a special case. It's the MFT fund, which we've talked about in the previous months. It's been saving for several years now in order to complete a very large infrastructure project on Forest Park Drive. So while it is at a deficit, quite a large deficit, it has cash reserves on hand and it is healthy enough to pay for that itself. It will be fine. Moving on. I just wanted to note, I included this slide mostly so that you can see there is sufficient cash on hand, even for those two funds that are going to have a budgeted deficit, just to complete projects out of cash reserves. Cash on hand is going to increase for all other funds due to them being balanced or having surpluses planned in the budget. To get into the meat of it, the proposed budget for the general fund is about $4.6 million with, this is actually the exciting part. This slide is to show this year's budget, the actuals, and the budget for next year. As Chief previously mentioned, we do have a very large surplus this year. There is a surplus projected right now of $1 million. I know that administration is going to be reviewing that surplus to see what projects and transfers would be appropriate before the end of the year. So that amount will probably reduce, but it's the good kind of reductions. It's allowing us to plan for the future. The budget for next year is balanced. It has a surplus of $33,000 right now, but we hope to grow that over the course of the year, as we always do. The projected revenues for this current year were actually 22% over budgeted revenues. As usual, sales tax has increased significantly. We've also seen some sales or some other increases in other areas I'll talk about shortly. We do budget a very small increase for the next year so that we have conservative figures so that if things were to not go quite as well, we still would be able to meet our goals and still have a balanced budget. We're budgeting a 4.6% increase in revenues next year and a 4.5% increase in expenses, which is how we're going to get a surplus in the coming year. Any questions over the general fund overall? All right.
So the surplus that we're not going to need an increase in the levy to get this?
That's a separate act that we set in, but that gives you a lot of latitude to lower the levy in the future.
With $1 million surplus, right?
If you wish, but
So the way that the property tax works, the levy that was passed in December, we will get those funds in this budget. So commenting on the levy for December of 2023 is premature because it's actually for the budget of 24-25.
Sure.
Obviously, whatever the board decides, we will take into account with the budget for that year. And as Mayor Phelan has already noted, with the current surplus, that does have a lot of latitude when we get to that point.
Thank you. Just wanted to air that out. Thank you.
All right. For the revenues, things have remained pretty steady, actually, in the percentage of where we are getting our money from. 43% of our revenues, total revenues, come from sales tax of one form or another, whether it's state sales tax, home rule sales tax, or food and beverage sales tax. That is the exact same percentage that it was the previous year. I think that funds are diversifying because, as I have mentioned, we received a lot more money, 22% more than we had budgeted. So we are actually seeing increases in other areas than sales tax. Sales tax is increasing, but other areas as well. Primarily what we're seeing is increases in investment income as interest rates are going up, and as the village's cash reserves have increased, we're able to make more money off of our money that we have. We're also seeing increases in corporate business taxes and income taxes. The state in 2022 increased the amount that local governments receive for income and business taxes. So you'll see the income tax line and the PPRT, which stands for personal property replacement tax, which is a business tax, a corporation tax. Those have both increased significantly. Again, for next year, we are budgeting increases, but small amounts, so that should any of these things not continue on the current path that they are on, we will still be in a strong financial position. Breakdown of the general fund expenses by department. This remained largely the same, with the departments basically spending almost the exact same amounts that they did last year. There was a bit of a flip-flop between the tower and admin. Admin in this current fiscal year that we're just about to end had some grant expenses budgeted that's now finished and over with, so it's not going to be in next year's budget, whereas Tower Park now has some increased expenses for the second payment for the Together We Play playground equipment and the donation to the celebration event. So those two percentages kind of flipped-flopped, but overall the increases to the departments were largely, other than those two, were largely flat. To get into specifics, I'm going to cover these fairly fast, but if you'll look on the back pages of each of your, there are comments. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Trustee Weisenberg.
So for the waste disposal, I understand that contract's going to be up for renewal, is it this year or next year?
December of '23.
23, so it's this year.
Yes.
Okay. Is that what we're estimating the renewal's going to cost, or?
I estimated a renewal increase that I don't know that we have to say or want to say publicly, but there is an increase in there.
We haven't met them yet, but we will.
Right,
Yes.
Right, that's what I was wondering.
And if I think we would definitely put that out for bid. If you recall, we were able to save a significant amount of money the last time because we bundled those two together instead of having one contract for recycling, one contract for refuse. We put them together, and what we 60,000. We saved. Okay. I'm sorry.
No.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. So I have each of these departments broken down. They're all largely fairly similar in that you'll see that one of our big expenses in every department is payroll. I've included on the back of each of the departments highlights of basically the projects that each department has completed in this current fiscal year, as well as what it's planning to do in the next fiscal year. For admin, we're particularly proud that there is a police pension employer payroll match right now. So basically, the village is making its contributions to the police pension plan in time, at the same time that the employees are, so that money will have time to grow and earn money off of investment incomes, which will ultimately decrease the burden on the village and the amount that they have to pay in the long run. Besides that, we are also making property tax payments to reduce the amount of the the unfunded liability, the amount that is not fully funded. I will say that we did receive news this year that the police pension plan has increased to, I believe it was 71% funded. So the village's efforts to decrease or increase the amount of funding in that have been working very successfully.
So
Yes,
we have to
Trustee
be
Weisberg.
94%?
90% by 2040, although I believe there is discussion to change that date.
You
By
should all
2040?
be commended for that because, I mean, we've closed this gap.
We're 71% funded?
So 10 years ago, I believe we were 39% funded, and 10 years before that, it was in the 20s, to give you some context. 27, thank you, Chief Sutton.
Yeah, I know there was some.
We were paying a higher rate because of the underfunding.
Yeah, so essentially by making those one-time contributions that the village has done the last several years, the village caught up very, very, very quickly, and we are now at 71% funded.
Yeah, I know before Chuck Weaver left office, he had introduced a bill to try to change that date as well.
Yeah.
I don't think it went anywhere then, but hopefully it goes somewhere at some point.
I will say that after receiving this, I have hope that the village will be able to meet that date, which previously I had
Awesome.
concerns, but I am not concerned anymore.
Awesome.
Obviously, we will continue to reevaluate that, and we are continuing that program into next year, so that will be helpful. That means we are making payments basically ahead of time, giving more time for interest to work in our favor. The other programs that we're proud of and that we'll be continuing from both this year and next year are partnerships with the Farnsworth Group for our Community Development Director, the partnership with Mike Bailey, the GPEDC, the PACVB, and also our partnerships with local events groups like the Chamber of Commerce to put on great events. For the coming year, we also have in the admin department portions of the matching grant funds required for Prospect Road Phase 1 and matching grant funds for a pending HUD project. In the fire department, in this current year, their biggest expense was hiring an assistant fire chief for day shift, and that continues into the next year. But they were also this year able to complete repairs at the roof of Station 2. They fixed the masonry here at Station 1. They installed a new door access system here, replaced turnout gear, and upgraded their reporting software. That will continue to add expenses into the next fiscal year, as well as retaining that assistant fire chief position. So they had that, and also there's a new telecommunications contract, which will begin in the calendar year of 2024. So between all of that, they allocated their additional spending to adding a weekend volunteer stipend. For the police expenses, again, a lot of the police expenses go to payroll. So you'll see that one of the highlights of this current fiscal year was the addition of a police officer, going from 2 police sergeants to 3 police sergeants. Continued partnerships with both MEG and PCAPS, which provides us with animal controls. Vehicle replacement program, 2 new cars, which will also be in next year. Upgraded security cameras and tactical equipment. A lot of those things, including the new police contract with salary adjustments, are going to be included into next year. The police department will also be faced with a new telecommunications contract in the calendar year of 2024.
If I may interject again, I just want to commend you all for adding the additional position that we plan on in police. I think it's needed, and I appreciate you all doing that.
All right, for the street department, the Public Works is going to be completing some garage upgrades. They've also funded some LED light and stoplight upgrades, as well as they will be purchasing new storm drain basins, and they have funded some sidewalk maintenance. In the coming year, they're going to be purchasing some new barricades to help with road closures. They'll continue to purchase new storm drain basins. There's some money for additional sidewalk maintenance, including a rotating program of sidewalk maintenance, as well as some funds set aside for emergency maintenance. They're planning to split the cost of a F-250 truck with water, purchase new trailers, and then they're looking at updating their labor tracking software to more efficiently provide service to the residents.
What upgrades are we looking at the garage? Just curious.
This year?
Yeah, the concrete pad?
Yeah, we're looking, we have our bins that we keep our rock and our dirt and all our stuff like
Yeah.
that. We're gonna try and get as many of those rebuilt so they maintain cleaner. Everything you put in there will last longer, it won't get all messy and muddy and dirty.
Okay.
That's
And the thing that covers the salt,
Mhm.
is that still gonna,
Yeah, that's actually not.
Still okay?
That's not very old, actually. That's maybe 10 years old, if that, maybe. Mark?
About that, yeah, I think.
It's still in pretty good shape, yeah.
Okay,
Especially
great.
compared to the one that was there before.
okay.
Yeah, putting floors in those bins is going to be an advantage, certainly. Something I always wanted to see happen.
Especially from an environmental perspective.
Well, and I will add, Trustee Wigginton, that it is Superintendent Chandler's plan to do some of the work in-house to reduce the costs, so.
Nice.
All right, for the tower budget, it had an expensive year and is going to have an expensive year in the coming year, but these are exciting things and we're thrilled to be able to pay for them. We have the repairs to the fountain as well as the replacement of the fountain lights from this year, and we made the first payment for the Together We Play playground equipment. We'll be making the second payment for the Together We Play playground equipment out of next fiscal year. And then, as previously discussed, waste disposal expenses, we do have this contract ending December of 2023, which will be renegotiated with a new rate starting in January of 2024. Moving on to the waterworks budget, I am also thrilled to announce that the water is looking at a projected surplus of just over $250,000. Administration will be reviewing that as well for transfers and for projects that will be able to set up the water company to better look to the future. The coming year's budget is balanced with a surplus of approximately $17,000. It's got a lot that is happening in the waterworks budget in the coming year. So to first talk about the revenues. Revenues for the coming year are primarily flat. There is a budgeted increase in revenues of approximately 3%. It's 4%. That budgeted increase comes in most part actually from anticipated grant funds. The projected expenses for this year are 3.2% under budget. The budgeted expenses for next year are 17% over what we budgeted for this year. This is due in large part to anticipated projects that were recommended in the 5-year capital improvement plan. Those have been included in the budget, and we do have, as I have already mentioned, a balanced budget for the waterworks. So moving on to the waterworks expenses, what are these capital improvement plans that I'm talking about? So I'm going to skip over this year and go straight into that. We are looking at flow meters to measure the amount of water that is coming out of the wells, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, out of each well right now, we have a master meter that all the wells go into, so we can only tell how much is coming from all the wells. This will tell us what each individual well is producing.
Perfect. That was recommended as part of the CIP or the capital improvement plan. There are also funds for the filtration engineering, which will begin looking at the process of doing filtration on the wells. The lead service line inventory grant expenses, which is currently in the queue for discussion. There will be which is part of the CIP as well, although it's not marked on this. There's a hydraulic model of the water system, which was recommended in the capital improvement plan, with also money that has been put aside for a process called ice pigging, which it has been explained to me despite that name. Essentially, it is a method that will help clean the inside of the mains of some of the sediment that has gathered there. So we will be starting that process. There's also funds in there for the new telecommunications contract that I've previously mentioned, as well as splitting the new F-250 with the street department. Additionally, water will be purchasing some barricades so that when they are doing repairs, they are better able to divert traffic. They'll be purchasing a dump trailer and looking to improve the SCADA system, which is basically the brain of the water system. I would like to note that the increase in spending in the water department is due largely to the recommendations from the Water Capital Improvement Plan, and related expenses total about $315,000 or 21% of that budget. So the 17% increase is due in large part to this, and we're excited to be able to get started on those projects. Yes.
I got a question before we get too far along. I believe it was last budget year, we transferred $250,000 into a capital improvement line item.
The general fund did, yes.
Where's that? I don't see that money because we haven't spent any of that.
So the general, you can see the general fund's capital improvement plan or capital improvement fund. On page 16 of it, it says police pension tax levy / capital improvement fund / business development fund. Okay. You will see there's $250,000 in estimated cash on hand. Currently, there are no transfers or expenses planned out of it, but there are discussions in the work for that fund.
Yeah, I couldn't find that. Thank you.
Yes, no, it is there, and we haven't forgotten about it, and we are going to make plans for it and discuss that. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, so then we will move into the restricted funds. The village has a variety of funds which it can only use for limited expenses. The police pension fund is the first on the list, which is basically money in, money out. So the board levies the police pension property taxes and then pays it immediately to the police pension fund. So it is whatever comes in goes straight back out. Next on the list is the motor fuel tax fund, which was previously mentioned as having a deficit. We're very excited to have this very large project paid in majority with state rebuild funds. We will be doing work to Forest Park Drive to mill and overlay that and to improve the road for many years to come. In addition to that, we're looking at doing a small spray patching program. The engineers have recommended that if we must take a year off from seal coating, which we will do in order to complete the Forest Park Drive project, that we do go ahead and spray patch. That will let us get ahead and kind of be ready for seal coating next year when we get back to that program. This fund will also pay for the salt for the coming year and then engineering for both projects. The business development districts and BDD1 and BDD2, primarily what they will be doing are covering the costs of development agreements and some matching grants for businesses. There's $100,000 in funds for matching grants for businesses in both BDD1 and BDD number 2. The BDD is also going to help pay a portion of the village's costs for the Prospect Phase 1 matching expenses. And there's a little bit of money for community development as well in there. TIF, this is kind of an overview where you won't see a budget in here necessarily. Basically, the TIF, when the TIF is passed, there is an overarching budget for the TIF funds. They don't have an annual budget the way a lot of other funds do. That's to provide more flexibility, but I like to include this just to show kind of what I anticipate is coming for the year for the TIF funds. The majority of the TIF funds actually are paid out to developers per development agreements that the board has already passed. Another significant portion goes in reimbursement to the school district to make them whole. From there, we move on to engineering, legal, and professional services to help us administer those funds and also to use the funds to complete public projects. So there's a little bit aside there set aside for community development as well. The SSA, the special service areas, these are restricted funds. This is essentially the money that goes out of the BDD and out of the TIFs into the funds for the economic development agreements. The cash balance that's in there right now is primarily comprised of either pending payments to developers or funds for the Treskers agreement, which are required to pay the bond. And then finally, the infrastructure maintenance fund. This is kind of like the capital improvement fund on the waterworks side. It is used to pay for the $1.5 million loan that the village got probably about 5 years ago that installed all new meters in Peoria Heights and as well as did a bunch of water tower projects and valve work and main works. Its funds are used to pay off the loan for that, and then we also save up funds for future projects. Like, for example, this year, I'm anticipating when we receive the bill for the Lake Avenue water main replacement that we will be using INF funds to pay off that balance. In the coming year, we'll also be using possibly this fund to pay for evaluation of the Lake Avenue water main on the other side of Prospect. Any questions about the restricted funds? All right. Any questions about the budget overall?
Stephanie, I can't thank you enough for such a good and thorough presentation. It was really, really helpful to all of us.
Good.
One of the things I would like some input in over the next couple of days, if you would give it to the administrator, some of the things that come to mind to me that you may want to consider with your $1 million surplus. You pay down additional police pension obligations. We've talked about improvements for Poplar Park. We've talked about pilot housing programs. We've talked about a Monroe Avenue streetscape. We've talked about, certainly have lots of needs when it comes to water infrastructure and sidewalks. So those are just some things that come to mind for me, but I think we would be looking for some direction on how you want to use this surplus.
Question for Stephanie. If I remember correctly, when I first got elected, it was mentioned that basically the village and the water company kind of operate as separate entities. Could we transfer monies from the general fund to the water department for upcoming infrastructure needs that we know are going to be happening? Like if we had a surplus, could we transfer?
Yes, the board
Okay.
could decide to do that.
Okay. Interesting.
I mean, this is a good problem to have, so
Right.
I'd
No,
like
I
everyone to
agree.
think on this over the next couple of days, and I'm one who believes that every public body should have 6 months of cash on hand for a rainy day, but we're way past that.
Yes.
We shouldn't be hoarding cash, we should be spending
Agree.
it back in the community and reinvesting it, so,
Yes, yes. I know administration is going to be reviewing that, and we'll be taking the trustees' comments into consideration and developing. I anticipate that that money would be transferred to a capital improvement fund and then allocated to, we have a capital improvement project list for review and for future projects and the needs that the villages has. So that would be the next discussion of where to go from there.
I know the sidewalks on Marietta, when we advertise ourselves as a walkable community,
Those are on
you
the
better
list.
look down when you walk on
Yes,
Marietta,
those
because
are on the
otherwise you're going to
list.
fall.
Yeah.
Some of those were taken care of.
I saw that when I was there a couple weeks ago. They look a lot better, but
Yeah.
it's still pretty rough. But much improved.
That was our long-term goal when we put that first $250,000
Right.
aside, that we would add to it each year depending on what our surplus was. So I think we've always had that vision, and I'm not sure if we knew it'd be this large,
Right.
but yeah, very excited about, like the mayor said, it's a good problem to have.
Right.
So.
And I would just say that we have some time to think about it. I mean, there are some other items as well as enhanced code enforcement, taking that out of the position of the police and maybe adding a paid force to take that responsibility over. But with regard to the water, I absolutely am in favor of that, but we need to explore all grant opportunities as well. We don't want to spend our money for other, in situations where we can get money from the government or the state on that.
That's a good point. I think we're good on grants for lead and service lines, but as far as filtration, Wayne, are there lots of grants out there?
Yeah, we'll continue to look for that. I think the next opportunity is Route 29, a grant for that project, because that'll be an expedited project. So we'll continue to look for grants for water. But in particular, right now, it's for things like lead service lines. And I think filtration would be a good grant as well, because that directly relates to public health.
Anyone else? While we're on water infrastructure, Mr. Aldridge, or Madam Clerk, I believe we have a meeting set for the public meeting on the presentation of the findings, is that correct?
Yeah, that's on the 23rd at 5:30. There'll be a public meeting, and so that will include a presentation from our consultant, Woodard & Kern, on the capital improvement program. I anticipate, the trustees will have some discussion, and that's a public meeting, so you may wish to take public comment at that meeting.
All right, and one other thing, Mr. Aldridge, or Trustee Weisenberg, we set a date on the Together We Play groundbreaking or ribbon.
I thought it was April
1st.
That's done? That is?
It's not 100% set in stone, but 99% there. April 1st, 10 a.m.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
And Mayor, if I may, you may see some actual groundbreaking within a week.
Oh, good.
By our Public Works Department doing some demolition work out there. And we expect to receive the equipment next week, next Wednesday.
Oh, okay,
So
good,
we're getting going on that project.
good. Okay, so anxious to hear later on your thoughts on how to use surplus. I would like to challenge every one of you to look deeply within your own committee and to identify maybe some of the top priorities too, but don't feel free, of course, to look outside of your committee, but look deeply within, please, and let's collectively decide wisely how to use this. Okay, we'd be at miscellaneous business. Any miscellaneous to come before the board?
I got a few things, unless you want to go first. When are we closing Forest Park Drive? I know for the several weeks for the remilling.
That hasn't been determined yet. I believe we're having a bid opening next week.
It's the 10th, I want to say. Is that a Tuesday? Yeah, no,
It's
no.
Tuesday, actually.
Yeah, it's the next Tuesday, so the 14th.
Okay.
Yeah, so that, obviously, we can't determine a date when the contractor's going to be able to do the work yet, but I
Okay.
think they're anticipating sometime in May.
I believe that's correct.
Chief, could we start a study at Illinois and Cox, putting a four-way stop in there? Right now, there's no stop sign.
I
Yes.
think we don't need a study if the neighbors want to sign it, or
Yeah.
you'd be okay.
I know in previous cases, you've put out the trailer and did some kind of,
Yeah, we could do just, a public safety study, we call it, because it does collect all the information as far as speed and count and everything else. But if it, like the mayor said, if it's something that, the residents want, we usually, that's something we can get done. But I think there's a couple other areas that I think are requesting, four-way.
cars just
Yeah.
blaze through there. And obviously, the ones that are going 60 down the road aren't going to stop completely at the stop sign, but
Sure.
at least it'll slow them down.
Sure.
So yeah, if we could
If you
get a
give me
stop sign.
give me that information and I can gather,
I will.
yeah.
We can do that fairly quickly. I think if someone in the neighborhood wanted to take the
Yeah.
lead and just walk around, get a few signatures.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
that satisfies the board, and I think we're going to lean towards what the neighbors want on something, that'd be real easy to do.
Perfect.
I know a few years back when we had Cox in Atlantic, there wasn't a stop sign going down Cox. I mean, from Prospect, it was a straight shot, and I made a suggestion, and we ended up putting a stop sign that stopped it and made the neighbors very happy. There's a lot of kids in that neighborhood, and I'm pretty sure down there, they come off Prospect, little shortcuts or whatever, and they fly, and that stop sign saved a lot of accidents. But I think I'm all for it. We want to put a stop sign up. I say let's do it.
If you have the locations, I'm sure we won't have any oppositions.
Okay.
I don't think anybody would
I'll get you
be
the
opposed to any.
information. No, I
any
don't think
stop
they
sign.
will either.
Right, so that'd be,
Topic at almost every
Sure.
neighborhood watch meeting.
Sure.
That is down by our garage, and that would be a very useful stop sign.
Yeah, I mean, they go really fast down that road. And like I said, they're not going to stop completely. They'll probably just, what do they call that kind of stop? But,
What else do you have, Trustee Weisenberg? You said you had several?
oh, that was it.
Oh, okay, all right.
That was two.
I thought you had a list. All right, go ahead,
Nothing about
Trustee
the-
Wiggington.
The what?
Did you have something else about the park?
The dog park?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know last meeting we discussed the dog park, and I thought it would be good if we just did half pea gravel and kept the existing rocks there. But after taking my dog there and a message I got over the weekend by a couple that lives on Glen Elm, if we could just do it all pea gravel, I think it would be good. I don't think it's necessarily the size of the rocks that are the problem. It's the rocks that are in there are like your generic landscaping rocks. They're real jagged. They're not smooth rocks. And apparently the paws of some dogs are more sensitive than others. But I know my dog didn't care for it, but she's kind of spoiled and lazy, so I don't know if it's necessarily the dog
Well, I
park.
think I got a call from the lady today, the one that lives on Montclair with the Pekingese, or whatever it was. She called me today and was complaining about that as well. So last time we talked, we said we would split it, but I think after further discussion, I know we did get a price last time, and it was $1,500 to do the entire thing, pea gravel, minus removing the fence, I believe. So that's something that we could get done if that's what the board.
Yeah, I know dogs are man's best friend, and
Yep.
they're going to be very happy with smooth pea gravel
Right.
in their dog park.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. That's an easy one, too, to fix. Trustee Wiggington,
Yeah, just to follow up from last meeting, Trustee Weisenberg and I had some discussions on the noise ordinance issue, and I think from my perspective, we need, from a public safety perspective, we need an ordinance that enforces the will of this board and is also in tune with the needs of our community. So right now, from my understanding, our officers don't have the ability to turn to a written ordinance that this board has done to enforce what we're enforcing. So we need to get simply from a legal perspective, we need to have something in writing that we are enforcing.
Yeah, the ordinance states 10. Previous administration gave a verbal of 11 on Friday and Saturday. That was passed on to me and the police department. That's what we've been enforcing ever since. So I think it's a housekeeping issue to clear everything up. We do need to make a change in writing so the officers know exactly what they're doing, and we'll enforce it as such. My question is, did you get any complaints over the last weekend? Because they did have bands, but they were inside. I wonder if this is just an outside venue, or did you get complaints this weekend?
Nope, I didn't hear anything this weekend.
I think it's mostly an outside.
Okay,
complaint.
I was wondering.
And I also would say that speaking to the residents, going door to door, I think people are very accepting of having these bans. It's a volume issue. I don't know that it's a time. It's
Right.
more of a volume issue, and I don't know exactly how we control that from this level, but we could put something, as you say, Matt, in writing.
And some of the complaints I got wasn't necessarily that they could like make out what was being sung. It was the bass.
Yeah.
And shaking the house. And I know it's a very delicate balance between preserving the nightlife and preserving the peace of citizens in their homes. We've got to find that balance.
I agree.
I don't think someone should have to sit in their house and their photos on their wall.
Right.
Well,
jamming
why
too.
don't we come up with a consensus on the time first, and then I will cover all these issues with the businesses that we've been discussing, and I think we can get through this, because you're right, it depends on the type of band, the volume of the band, because there were some nights that we never got complaints at all, and again, because of the type of music. So why don't we get that squared away first, get the ordinance changed, and then we'll proceed with notifying them of what our wishes are, and I'm sure we'll get through it.
I'd advise we get that on the agenda for our next meeting, and then, in that meantime, board members talk amongst themselves to determine what they believe the time should be, whether it be 10, 11, or 2 in the afternoon, whatever it is, that number needs to be set in writing, because it's really unfair for our officers to not be able to turn to a ordinance written down and have to and kind of put them without that.
Right.
Well, whatever the time is, I think the best, when this was brought up the last time we talked about it, is a lot of those bands, they're facing Prospect. There's nothing to stop that sound. And I think it'd be a good idea if we could turn them to face the other way. That way you got the building to help absorb the sound, because especially at nighttime, sound travels a lot farther. And you look across there, you got nothing. I mean, it's going to hit, I was going to almost say Cohen's building, but.
Sherman's.
Sherman's. I mean, and that's not that much for it to hold, because it's going to spread out and it's going to shoot right down Toledo and.
When I talk to them about the hours, I'll cover that topic too. So.
I mean, because it absorbs it, and I mean, you're not going to stop that sound going down. And I used to live over there. There's nothing to stop it at all. Hal Automotive, so.
All right, well, I want to thank you both for getting together. So I'm going to ask that you would continue to meet with the chief. Also, I'd like you to work with council so you bring us a draft ordinance when you're ready. The board, may want to amend that or change it, but I'd like you both to work together to bring us a starting point. I would also encourage you to meet with the bar owners who have live music before you draft that ordinance. You've heard a lot from citizens. And then also, another thing we should take into consideration, as liquor commissioner, I had some tickets written too for violators. Those tickets, in my opinion, are not nearly steep enough because, Dustin, I forget how much they are. They're really an insignificant amount of money for violating.
Yeah, it depends on the offense. First offense is minimal. I think as you go out throughout the year, I think they do climb rapidly. But yeah, the initial expense is it's really minimal. Yeah, or fine.
Yeah. So if it's not something that's going to get the attention, and I love all of our bar owners, but they have to take some responsibility too for the bands that are playing there and be aware of the surroundings and everything that's going on. So I look forward for you all to bring that back to us, and please engage the other trustees individually if you're able to get us something that we can approve. Anything else, Trustee Wigginton?
That's it. Thank you, Mr.
Any other
Mayor.
miscellaneous? Trustee Gett,
I move to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're adjourned.